Having finished shaving, Isidore strode into the living room and shut off the TV set. Silence. It flashed from the woodwork in the walls. It smote him with an awful total power. As he stood by the inert TV set, he experienced the silence as visible and, in its own way, alive. Alive. He wondered if the others who had remained on Earth experienced the void in this way. But whom could he compare notes with? He lived alone in this deteriorating, blind building of 1,000 uninhabited apartments, which, like all its counterparts, fell, day by day, into greater entropic ruin. Okay, he thought, I'm off to work. He reached for the doorknob that opened the way into the unlit hall, then shrank back as he glimpsed the vacuity of the rest of the building. It lay in wait for him. Out here, the force which he had felt busily penetrating his specific apartment. God, he thought, and reshut the door. He was not ready for the trip up those clanging stairs to the empty roof where he had no animal. The echo of himself ascending, the echo of nothing. Time to grasp the handles, he said to himself, and crossed the living room to the black empathy box. When he turned it on, the usual faint smell of negative ions surged from the power supply. He breathed in eagerly, already buoyed up. Then the cathode ray tube glowed like an imitation, feeble TV image. Taking a deep breath to steady himself, he grasped the twin handles. The visual image congealed. He saw at once a famous landscape, the old brown barren ascent, with tufts of dried-out bone-like weeds poking slantedly into a dim and sunless sky. One single figure toiled its way up the hillside, an elderly man wearing a dull, featureless robe. The man, Wilbur Mercer, plodded ahead, and as he clutched the handles, John Isidore gradually experienced a waning of the living room in which he stood. He found himself, instead, as always before, entering the landscape of drab hill, drab sky. At the same time, he no longer witnessed the climb of the elderly man. His own feet now scraped, sought purchase among the familiar loose stones. He once again smelled the acrid haze of the sky, not Earth's sky, but of some place, alien, distant, and yet, by means of the empathy box, instantly available. He had crossed over, in the usual perplexing fashion, physical merging, accompanied by mental and spiritual identification with Wilbur Mercer, had reoccurred, as it did for everyone who at this moment clutched the handles, either here on Earth or on one of the colony planets. He experienced them, the others, incorporated the babble of their thoughts. They, and he, cared about one thing, the climb, the need to ascend. Today we are higher than yesterday, and tomorrow, he, Wilbur Mercer, glanced up at the view of the ascent ahead. Impossible to make out the end, too far, but it would come. A rock, hurled at him, struck his arm. He felt the pain. Who, he wondered, peering to see his tormentor? The old antagonists manifesting themselves at the periphery of his vision. It, or they, had followed him all the way up the hill, and they would remain until at the top. He remembered the top, the sudden leveling of the hill, when the climb ceased and the other part of it began. God, he thought in weariness, in what way is this fair? Why am I here alone like this, tormented by something I can't even see? And then, within him, the multiple babble of everyone else in the fusion broke the illusion of aloneness. You felt it too, he thought. Yes, the voices answered. We got hit, on the left arm. It hurts like hell. Once, he remembered, it had been different, back before the curse had come, an earlier, happier part of life. They, his foster parents, Frank and Cora Mercer, had found him floating on an inflated rubber air rescue raft off the coast of New England. Or had it been Mexico? He did not now remember the circumstances. Childhood had been nice. He had loved all life, especially the animals, had in fact been able for a long time to bring dead animals back as they had been. But the killers had arrested him as a freak, more special than any of the other specials, and everything had changed. Local law prohibited the time reversal faculty by which the dead returned to life. They had spelled it out to him during his 16th year. He continued for another year to do it secretly, in the still remaining woods. But an old woman, whom he had never seen or heard of, had told. Without his parents' consent, they, the killers, had bombarded the unique nodule which had formed in his brain, had attacked it with radioactive cobalt, and this had plunged him into a different world. It had been a pit of corpses and dead bones, and he struggled for years to get up from it. The donkey, and especially the toad, the creatures most important to him, had vanished, had become extinct. Only rotting fragments remained. At last a bird, which had come there to die, told him where he was. He had sunk down into the tomb world. How long that part of the cycle had lasted he did not know. Anyhow, he was no longer sinking. He had begun to ascend along with the others. Long ago he had lost sight of them. He found himself evidently climbing alone, but they were there, and he felt them, strangely, inside him. Isidore stood holding the two handles, experiencing himself as encompassing every other living thing, and then, reluctantly, he let go. It had to end, as always. Using a Kleenex, he dried his damaged arm, and heard, muffled and far off, a TV set. It's someone else in the building, he thought wildly, unable to believe it. Not my TV, that's off. It's below, on another level entirely. I'm not alone here anymore, he realized. Another resident has moved in, taken one of the abandoned apartments, and close enough for me to hear him. Let's see, he thought rapidly. What do you do when a new resident moves in? On his way to work, Rick Deckard, as Lord knew how many other people, stopped briefly in front of one of San Francisco's larger pet shops along Animal Row. In the center of the block-long display window, an ostrich, in a clear plastic cage, returned his stare. Rick spent a few more minutes staring grimly at the price tag. He then continued on to the Hall of Justice on Lombard Street and found himself a quarter of an hour late for work. As Rick unlocked his office door, his superior, Police Inspector Harry Bryant, jug-eared and red-headed, hailed him. "Meet me at 9:30 at Dave Holden's office." Inspector Bryant flicked briefly through a clipboard of onion-skin-typed sheets. "Holden is at Mount Zion Hospital with a laser track through his spine. He'll be there for a month at least, until they can get one of those new organic plastic spinal sections to take hold." "What's happened?" Rick asked, chilled. The department's chief bounty hunter had been all right yesterday. Bryant muttered over his shoulder something about 9:30 in Dave's office and departed. As he entered his own office, Rick heard the voice of his secretary, Ann Marston, behind him.
"Mr. Deckard, you know what happened to Mr. Holden? He got shot."
"Yeah?" he responded absently.
"It must have been one of those new extra clever Andys the Rosen Association is turning out. Did you read over the company's new brochure? The Nexus 6 brain unit is capable of selecting within a field of 2 trillion constituents, or 10 million separate neural pathways." "You missed the vid call this morning. Miss Wilde told me. It came through the switchboard exactly at 9.
"A call-in?" Rick asked.
"A call out by Mr. Bryant to the WPO in Russia, asking them if they would be willing to file a formal written complaint with the Rosen Association's factory representative east."
Harry still wants the Nexus 6 brain unit withdrawn from the market? He felt no surprise. Since the initial release of its specifications and performance charts, most police agencies which dealt with escaped Andys had been protesting. "The Soviet police can't do anything more than we can," he said. Legally, the manufacturers of the Nexus 6 brain unit operated under colonial law, their parent auto factory being on Mars.
"Want to know what the Russian police said?"
Miss Marston asked.
"I know that, too."
Her freckled orange face glowed. "I'll find out from Harry Bryant," Rick said. Seating himself at his desk, he pointedly fished about in a drawer until Miss Marston, perceiving the hint, departed.